You'd think when your wife starts training for a marathon, the biggest problem would be dealing with the sweaty laundry. Turns out, my problem was figuring out why my marathoner wife never seemed to actually sign up for a race. Spoiler, she wasn't working on her running times, she was working on her alibis. It all started innocently enough. Lauren, my wife of 15 years, announced one day that she wanted to get fit and set a big goal for herself. She chose a marathon, which I thought was ambitious but admirable. I was all for it. I even bought her fancy running shoes and a smartwatch to track her progress. She joined a local gym and started going religiously, 4, sometimes 5 times a week. At first, I was impressed. She'd come home looking flushed and glowing, talking about the treadmill and the new stretching routine her trainer had recommended. She seemed more energetic, happier, and even more affectionate toward me. I thought, this is great. She's doing something for herself, and it's making her feel good. But then I started noticing little things that didn't quite add up. For one, her training runs never seemed to leave any mileage on her smartwatch. I figured she just forgot to track them, no big deal. But when I asked her about signing up for a race, she always had a reason not to. This one's too soon, or I'm not ready yet. Months went by, and still no race. Lauren's gym trips also started getting longer. What began as an hour here and there turned into 2-hour sessions, sometimes more. She explained that she was staying late to use the sauna and relax her muscles. Recovery is just as important as the workout, she said, and I didn't question it. But then there was the gym bag. One day, while helping her unpack groceries, I noticed it sitting in the back seat of her car. It looked heavier than usual, and out of curiosity, I peeked inside. There were no running shoes, no workout clothes. Instead, there was a small makeup bag, perfume, and a neatly folded dress I'd never seen before. I didn't say anything. Not then, but something about it didn't sit right with me. Who wears perfume and dresses for a gym session? Still, I wanted to believe the best. After all, Lauren and I had a solid marriage, or so I thought. I figured I was overthinking, letting paranoia creep in where it didn't belong. But the longer her training continued, the more questions I couldn't shake. It wasn't the marathon that was suspicious anymore. It was the fact that Lauren seemed to be running from something, not toward it. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact moment my curiosity turned into suspicion. It wasn't one big revelation, but a series of little things. Tiny inconsistencies that chipped away at the trust one had in Lauren. Still, I told myself it was nothing, that I was being ridiculous. After all, we had a good life, didn't we? But good lives don't usually come with unexplained dresses and missing gym shoes. Lauren's marathon training continued to evolve, or rather devolve. While she'd initially been excited to share her progress, she now grew cagey when I asked about it. She stopped wearing her smartwatch entirely, claiming it was too distracting during runs. When I offered to come watch her train at the park or even join her for a session, she brushed me off with a warm smile and a pat on the shoulder. "You just slow me down," she'd say. At the time, I laughed it off. But there was something else, her car. Lauren's little sedan was suddenly always low on gas, despite her claiming she only drove short distances to the gym. I started wondering just how far she was going. One Saturday, while she was out on one of her extended gym sessions, I decided to dig deeper. It felt wrong, sneaky even, but the unease in my gut wouldn't let me rest. I started with the gym itself. A quick Google search revealed a website with member photos, class schedules, and reviews. Lauren had mentioned her trainer's name a few times, so I searched for him in the member spotlight section. There he was, Jack. Young, fit, and exactly the kind of guy you'd expect to work at a gym. But there was something odd. None of his classes matched Lauren's training times. In fact, the classes he taught were all scheduled in the morning, while Lauren's gym trips were almost exclusively in the evening. I clicked on his profile and noticed an interesting detail. He was also an instructor at a spin studio across town. A spin studio Lauren had never mentioned. For most people, this would have been a coincidence, but something about it nagged at me. Was she really at the gym all those nights, or was she somewhere else entirely? The question lingered in the back of my mind, growing louder with each passing day. Then there was the incident with the perfume. Lauren had started wearing a new scent, one I didn't recognize. It was subtle but expensive, and it clung to her skin long after she came home from her training runs. When I casually mentioned it, she brushed it off as something a friend had given her to try. But I couldn't help wondering, who gives perfume as a gift for gym workouts? One night, my curiosity got the better of me. While Lauren was in the shower, I checked her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. Her messages were clean, too clean. The kind of clean that only comes from someone who's gone out of their way to delete anything incriminating. But her location history was another story. Lauren's gym visits weren't at the gym. Instead, her phone showed a pattern of stops at a coffee shop across town, followed by long stretches of time at a nearby address, a residential building. My heart sank as I stared at the screen, the pieces clicking into place. The coffee shop, the building, the gas tank running low despite short drives. It all painted a picture I didn't want to see. But here's the thing, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Confrontation felt like giving her an opportunity to explain, to spin the truth into something palatable. I didn't want a story. I wanted facts. So I decided to wait, to watch, to gather everything I could before taking the next step. Lauren thought she was running circles around me. What she didn't realize was that I'd already started keeping pace. Once you start paying attention, patterns emerge. I wasn't just looking at Lauren's actions anymore. I was analyzing them, breaking them down like a puzzle I didn't even know I'd started. Her routines, her quirks, her excuses. They all seemed perfectly normal until I laid them out side by side. That's when I realized how much of her life had become a blur of contradictions. The first thing I noticed was her wardrobe. Lauren had always been stylish, but suddenly her gym attire seemed excessive. She'd replaced her old workout clothes with expensive, brand-name outfits that looked more suited for a photo shoot than a treadmill. When I joked that she was dressing up for the dumbbells, she laughed it off, saying she just wanted to feel good while training. But why did feeling good also involve a pair of designer sunglasses I'd never seen her wear outside of the car? Her gym bag also became a curiosity. While she was in the shower one evening, I took a closer look. Inside, everything seemed normal at first. Workout clothes, a water bottle, a towel. But tucked at the bottom was something out of place. A small travel-sized bottle of mouthwash and a pack of mints. Odd for a gym visit, but maybe not damning. I put everything back exactly as I found it, careful not to tip her off. The second clue came during one of her late-night workouts. I'd been tracking her location history after the coffee shop discovery, and sure enough, she was back at that same residential building. This time, I decided to dig deeper. A quick online search for the address revealed that it wasn't just any building. It was one of those trendy, upscale apartment complexes with rooftop pools and valet parking. The kind of place someone like Jack, the trainer, might live. I felt a surge of anger, but it was overshadowed by a strange calm. If Lauren was going to such lengths to hide this, it meant she thought I wouldn't notice. And that gave me an advantage. The third clue came from an unlikely source, her car. I'd always been the one to fill up her tank, so I knew her mileage better than she did. But one weekend, when she claimed she'd only driven to the gym and back, the odometer told a different story. There were at least 40 extra miles on the clock, unaccounted for. When I asked her about it casually, she mumbled something about taking a scenic route. A scenic route to the gym? Sure. And then there was the envelope. One evening, Lauren came home later than usual, flustered and preoccupied. She tossed her mail onto the kitchen counter before heading upstairs, leaving me alone with the stack. Amid the usual bills and flyers, there was an unmarked envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on plain stationery. No name, no signature, just 4 words. Can't wait to see you. The handwriting wasn't mine. I stared at the note, my mind racing. It wasn't just the message, it was the simplicity of it, the confidence. Whoever wrote it knew Lauren wouldn't need more than that to understand. And she brought it home, carelessly mixed in with the day's mail, as if the risk didn't even register. But I still didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted the full picture. If this was what I thought it wasn't just about Lauren. It was about the life we'd built together and the cracks she thought I couldn't see. So I did what any self-respecting husband with a growing suspicion would do. I planned. Lauren was hiding something, and she thought she was clever. But the thing about running circles is that eventually you trip over your own feet. I just had to make sure I was watching when she did. By this point, my life felt like a split-screen drama. On one side, Lauren continued her marathon training, full of late-night gym sessions, elaborate excuses, and a carefully curated air of normalcy. On the other side, I quietly pieced together her trail of breadcrumbs, each step pushing me closer to the truth. She didn't realize that while she was running away, figuratively and literally, I was right behind her, collecting every scrap of evidence she thought she'd hidden. The note from the envelope haunted me. I couldn't get those 4 words out of my head. Can't wait to see you. It was personal, intimate, and completely outside the boundaries of our marriage. But it wasn't enough. I needed more than a vague note to confirm what I suspected. So I decided to dig deeper into Lauren's digital life. Her phone was too clean, every message thread perfectly curated, every app in its place. But what about her smartwatch? Lauren's fancy gadget wasn't just a tracker for steps. It was a record of everything she'd been doing or not doing. One evening, while she was in the shower, I synced her watch with my laptop. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Her training runs weren't runs at all. The GPS data showed her stopping at the same places over and over again. The coffee shop, the upscale apartment building, and a park I didn't recognize. There was no route, no consistent exercise pattern, just a series of static points. The data told a story of rendezvous, not workouts. Then there was her heart rate log. On days she claimed to be doing intense cardio, her heart rate barely spiked. But on other days, particularly the one she spent at that apartment building, it soared. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lauren's smartwatch was tracking her betrayal as efficiently as it would a marathon. The final piece of the puzzle came unexpectedly. While tidying up the garage, I stumbled across a small, forgotten pile of receipts in her car. Most of them were unremarkable: gas station purchases, the odd coffee shop stop, until I found one from a high-end steakhouse downtown. It was dated for a night when Lauren had told me she was at the gym. The receipt wasn't just for a meal. It was for a dinner for 2. And then I saw it. The server's handwritten note at the bottom. A cheerful, "Hope to see you again, Lauren and Jack." Jack. The name wasn't new to me. It was the same name she'd casually dropped months ago when mentioning her trainer. But now, it was real, tangible, inked onto a receipt that confirmed everything I needed to know. This wasn't paranoia anymore, it was fact. But here's the thing, I didn't feel anger in that moment. I felt clarity. Lauren had been running circles around me, thinking I couldn't keep up, but she was wrong. Now I had more than just suspicions. I had her lies, her patterns, and the pieces of her double life all lined up. And I was ready to use them. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I began planning something bigger, something she wouldn't see coming. Lauren had carefully crafted her world, layering her secrets under the guise of fitness and independence. She thought she was in control, but control is a funny thing. It shifts when you least expect it. If she wanted to play games, I'd make sure she knew who was really in charge. The stage was set. The evidence was gathered. Now it was just a matter of time before her marathon turned into the finish line of her own undoing. Once I had enough pieces of Lauren's puzzle, my focus shifted from suspicion to action. She thought she was clever, slipping out for hours under the guise of gym sessions and errands, but she had underestimated me. Now, it wasn't about catching her. It was about gathering the evidence I needed to ensure her lies would unravel in front of her. First, I started small. I retraced her patterns, double-checking the locations from her smartwatch GPS logs. The stops at the coffee shop and the apartment building were too consistent to ignore. I also looked for receipts and charges tied to those visits, but her credit card records were surprisingly clean. Too clean. That's when it hit me. She wasn't using our shared accounts for anything incriminating. She had a second credit card. I'd seen her using a sleek, black card on occasion, but I'd never thought much of it. She said it was a work perk, a rewards program from her office. Digging into that became my next priority. One evening, while she was in the shower, I slipped into her purse and found the card. Taking a photo of the details, I logged into the issuing bank's website and accessed her account using the personal information I knew by heart. The transaction history was like a slap in the face. Dinners for two at upscale restaurants, boutique purchases, and even hotel bookings. All under her name, all at times she claimed to be at the gym. It was undeniable. Lauren wasn't just hiding an affair. She was funding it with the same precision she used to hide everything else. I saved the records and began organizing my evidence. Every location, every charge, and every alibi she'd used were laid out in a timeline. But I wasn't just collecting proof for myself. I was building a case for her inevitable downfall. Next, I turned my attention to her social media. Lauren wasn't active on her main accounts, but I remembered a second Instagram account she'd created years ago, one she used for posting things like recipes and home projects. I checked it out, and buried among mundane posts, I found photos from her runs and training sessions. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until I noticed small details. Her gym selfies were often taken in places that didn't match the gym's decor. One was in the corner of a sleek, modern apartment that looked suspiciously like the one she frequently visited. I reverse-searched one of the photos, and it confirmed my suspicion. The location was tagged at the apartment complex I'd tracked through her GPS. She hadn't even bothered to edit the metadata. The last piece of the puzzle came from a conversation she'd had with one of her friends over the phone. Lauren was laughing, talking animatedly, while I pretended to be engrossed in my laptop nearby. She mentioned a Jack casually, describing him as so helpful and such a great motivator. It wasn't much, but it was enough to confirm what I already knew. Jack wasn't just her trainer. He was the reason she'd been running in circles around me. I didn't let my anger cloud my judgment. This wasn't the time for confrontation. It was the time for planning. Revenge needed to be sharp, calculated, and irrefutable. I wasn't going to yell or fight. I was going to expose Lauren in a way that left no room for denial. The first step was collecting everything in a single file. The transaction records, the GPS logs, the suspicious photos, and even screenshots of her messages. I wanted a timeline so airtight that even Lauren wouldn't be able to spin her way out of it. The second step was deciding when and where to drop the bombshell. Lauren's birthday was coming up, and she had invited friends and family over for a small celebration. It seemed perfect. She wanted to be the center of attention, to bask in admiration. Instead, she would find herself at the center of a carefully staged reckoning. As the day approached, I finalized the details. I printed out key pieces of evidence and saved the rest onto a flash drive. I made sure Lauren suspected nothing, playing the role of the clueless husband who still believed in her marathon training dreams. She had been running from the truth for months, but the finish line was in sight. And when she crossed it, I'd be waiting to reveal exactly what she'd been hiding. The day of Lauren's birthday arrived, and with it, the perfect opportunity to bring her carefully constructed world crashing down. She had no idea what was coming. As she bustled around the house, preparing for the small celebration, she looked radiant, confident, even. But I wasn't the adoring husband she thought I was. I was the man holding the final piece of her undoing. Friends and family began arriving, filling our home with laughter and warmth. Lauren played the perfect hostess, chatting and smiling, soaking up the attention. It was almost enough to make me second-guess what I was about to do. Almost. But then I remembered the lies, the excuses, the nights she'd spent with someone else while I stayed home, believing her stories. She had made this choice, not me. As dinner wrapped up, I stood up to make a toast. Lauren beamed at me, no doubt expecting me to gush about how wonderful she was. I raised my glass and began with a warm smile. I want to take a moment to celebrate Lauren, not just for her birthday, but for all the hard work she's been doing recently. Training for a marathon, managing the house, and being a great partner. It's truly impressive. She looked at me, her smile faltering slightly. I could see the faint flicker of unease in her eyes. And in honor of her dedication and effort, I continued, I've prepared something special. A little slideshow of her journey. Everyone, please direct your attention to the screen. The room fell silent as I clicked a button on the remote, and the TV came to life. At first, I displayed harmless photos, pictures of us on vacation, Lauren at family events, her holding her gym bag and smiling for the camera. She relaxed, even laughing along with the guests. But then the tone shifted. The next slide was a GPS map, showing her training runs and frequent stops at the coffee shop and apartment building. Confusion rippled through the room. I didn't pause to explain. I let the evidence speak for itself. The slides moved on to transaction records from her hidden credit card, the boutique hotel charges, the steakhouse dinner, and receipts for high-end lingerie I'd never seen her wear. By now, the guests were murmuring, their eyes darting between the screen and Lauren, whose face had gone pale. The final slide was the clincher, a side-by-side comparison of her gym selfies taken in Jack's apartment and photos of Jack himself from the gym's website. The resemblance was undeniable. The room erupted in stunned whispers and gasps. Lauren stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. But what could she say? The evidence was irrefutable. I didn't want to believe it at first, I said, my voice calm but cutting. I thought maybe I was imagining things. But Lauren, you left me no choice but to dig deeper. And here we are. The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren's family stared at her in shock, while her friends avoided eye contact altogether. My chest felt heavy, but there was also a sense of release. Justice, finally served. You don't get to spin this, Lauren. You've been running this race for months, but the truth has finally caught up to you. I turned to the room. Thank you all for coming tonight. I thought it was important for everyone to see the reality behind the picture Lauren has been painting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think this is where my part of the evening ends. I walked out of the room, leaving Lauren to deal with the fallout of her lies. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of emotions: pain, anger, relief. But most of all, I felt free. By the next morning, I was gone. I'd packed my things, left a detailed note, and handed divorce papers to my lawyer. Lauren could keep running, but not in my direction. Her race was over.